Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. I'm going to start off this week by talking about nothing recent or upcoming. Indeed, I'm going to dig up the past like a disgruntled lover who never forgave you for forgetting that anniversary. But seriously, sexist stock photo? In my case, it's always been the guy who gets all pissy about that sort of thing. But I digress. Unlike those unpleasant episodes, I'll endeavor to make this dig much more enjoyable. As activists, our job is to stay on or even ahead of the news, to report breaking news, be part of the latest in the socio-political realm. And while that is, of course, vital to the integrity and progress of our work, it's also really, really important to know and study the past. And not just so we can offer up dutiful memes to activists past, but so that we might learn from their work and how their work was fought, destroyed, and covered up. Chris Hedges offers up some of this history in this week's Quote of the Day segment. As Hedges points out in his book, Wages of Rebellion, our history is peppered with the battles between the rich and the working class. And hell, this is a story as old as Aristotle. As Hedges explains, the quote-unquote freedoms that we all appreciate today, the sound bites of America, these are things that people have been fighting for, dying for, literally for decades. The democratic openings we achieved were fought and paid for with the blood of abolitionists, African Americans, suffragists, workers, and anti-war and civil rights activists. Our radical movements, repressed and ruthlessly dismantled in the name of anti-communism, were the real engines of equality and social justice. Those union workers who were killed, wounded, fired, or blacklisted, those civil rights and abolitionist activists who were killed, beaten, or jailed, the women and men who demanded justice in times of gross injustice, only to be made into stamps later on, these are the people who created our freedoms. Our country started out with only a sliver of the population, aka 6%, aka white property-owning men, allowed to vote. And this is not a particular bash on the US, every country has blood on its hands. But what is a bash on the US is that other countries, for the most part, seem to be more aware of the struggle for rights than we Americans are. We seem to think that the fucking Freedom Fairy brought them, like that they're just supposed to appear one day because America, and we're American, and that's what we do, freedom and fried Twinkies. And that, at least the Freedom Fairy part, is bullshit. If anything, the America we know today is a combination of ongoing fights for justice, hard-won battles, and bitter backtracking thanks to apathy and the ruthless punting of social movements. As Hedges describes in that same book, the establishment of what would become the FBI in 1908 was a direct response to the revolutionary wave that gripped the American working class. FBI agents, often little more than state-employed goons and thugs, ruthlessly hunted down those on the left. The FBI spied on and infiltrated labor unions, political parties, radical groups, especially those led by African Americans, anti-war groups, and later the civil rights movement in order to discredit anyone who questioned the power of the state and big business. Agents burglarized homes and offices. They illegally opened mail and planted unlawful wiretaps, created blacklists and demanded loyalty oaths. They destroyed careers and sometimes lives. By the time they were done, America's progressive and radical movements, which had given the country the middle class and opened up our political system, did not exist. It was upon the corpses of these radical movements, which had fought for the working class, that the corporate state was erected. And add to this a disillusioned populace that overwhelmingly opted for apathy instead of paying attention, you get what we have today, a corporatocracy built on the crumbling battles waged and won by the activists of yesteryear. The tagline of Hedges' book is the moral imperative of revolt, and judging by a country that went from slaveholders and a 6% voting bloc, I'd say that imperative is historically and presently justified. Change is not handed over by that aforementioned Freedom Fairy. You have to take change from the static dipshits on high. And part of this rests, as I said, in knowing your history. Know your history so you know what to repeat, rework, and refashion, and what to just leave the fuck behind, like scrunchies and polyester suits. Really, talk about society letting go. But in all seriousness, know your history. Know your history so that you can recognize the correlation between jailing a suffragette and jailing a hacktivist, a whistleblower, a civil rights activist, and a Black Lives Matter activist. This record is on fucking repeat in so many ways. And if we don't recognize it soon and jump off this sick merry-go-round, we're going to spin into a vortex of self-destruction.